Well, everybody, I want to introduce you to Nelly, and you're right up my alley because I've been in tech for 30 years. So technology, I'm a tech geek. Sometimes I hate saying it because, I talk in public and I do things and they're like,
Well, geek is the new chic. You know that, right?
well, let me tell you, I am chic because I am a true geek. Just curious, what got you into you don't fit the normal technology mold. I mean, so I've run technology companies, I run technology teams, and most of the people I can't pull out of the back room. They stay kind of in the back because they just don't quite interact as well as most people do. How did you get started in technology?
I actually never thought I was going to be in tech. I'm a first generation immigrant. I came here from the former Soviet Union, Tajikistan, in 91, when right before the Soviet Union collapsed. And when deciding what to study in school, I was determined to actually pick a major so that I didn't waste time going to school. And I was sitting there with my guidance counselor, and we decided that if I went into tech, because this was in the early 90s, if I went into tech, I will definitely have a job when I get out, right? That was my early motivation. But the funny thing is that I actually thought that it was going to teach me Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel really, really well, like my computer science degree. I had absolutely no concept of what it meant to be in tech, that you could actually write code and tell the computers what to do. I just, in fact, turned on the computer for the very first time in my computer science class. And that's where I started. I actually am not a techie. I didn't grow up with tech. The Soviet Union was probably about 20 years behind in terms of technology in the early 90s when I came here. So I call myself an accidental techie, and having a very rough start was actually a blessing in disguise because I had to work really, really hard. And what I discovered is something that I think prepared me for the rest of my career. And that if you are the creator of technology rather than the user, you have a lot more power to shape the future and actually solve the problems of the world much more efficiently. And once I got that, my whole life completely shifted upside down because I felt like I was powerful and, in fact, finished my computer science degree in 3 years instead of 4 because I was really excited and wanted to finish and get going. So yeah, that's how I got started. And I think coming from a non-tech background gave me the empathy to really understand how to communicate with people who are not techies, that the importance of getting down to their level and communicating, which is what a lot of non-techies have a hard time doing. A lot of techies have a hard time doing, right? And so I think that made me perfect for the role that I'm doing.
So now let me ask you your first question. When someone asks you a tech question, do you say, "Is the power on?" See, that's what I always have to start with. Do you have power? Is the power button on? So and we're going to get in and we're going to talk about your company, Techspeak. Before we get there, I mean, so a lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs and they're people starting off, and I absolutely love talking with people on what their mindset was or where they were, because when we collide, when we have our imagination, we think of these things, and we get these thoughts, we have this imagination. Most people ignore that intuition. They have these great ideas because of something they knew, and they get this thought, and we just kind of, that'll never work. I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. What type of thoughts and what type of mindset were you in when you thought, because you had to bring a few things together to create a new company? You brought different pieces together that you saw, and your imagination said, well, if I could, A's out here and B's out here, if I do this and create a C, option, that will make everything better. So where were you from a mindset standpoint when you, because that's where, to me, that's kind of where the ignition source is of genius is at that point where you have that thought and you have that energy and what you actually do about it rather than just sitting on your butt and saying, well, it'll never happen.
Yeah, I think the best companies come from the biggest pain points that you see over and over and over again. And even though you don't want to do them, they come back to you. And this was exactly the story of Techspeak and how it was born. So Techspeak is an online training where I teach non-tech entrepreneurs how to manage teams and projects without being technical or knowing how to code, without being the tech guru, essentially, which is a lot of the entrepreneurs, especially today, right? So at the inception of Techspeak, I was a CTO. I would go out and I would speak and train on this topic already. And literally after every single event that I did, I had a huddle of entrepreneurs around me sharing horror story after horror story after horror story about them attempting to bring their ideas to life, working with tech people, and just saying really bad things about developers. And at first, I actually blamed developers. I just couldn't figure out how they morally could function like this or even stay in business. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that actually the problem, yes, there are bad tech people, but most likely the problem is with the entrepreneur themselves. Because when you're not technical and you don't know the process for building web and mobile applications, you don't know how to ask the right questions, you don't know how to communicate your ideas effectively, so tech people know exactly what you actually mean, and you will always make mistakes because you will miss a lot of the red flags. And so once I had that epiphany, I thought, well, let me go find a resource for these people to recommend them. And there wasn't anything. I looked really, really hard because I was busy with my work. I didn't actually want to solve this problem. And there was nothing out there. And I thought, well, if there's nothing out there, I should create it. And the reason why I thought I was the perfect person is because I was actually came from a non-technical background. I had so much empathy for non-technical people and understand their fears. Because I was there once. I was working with tech gods who used to talk down to me and thought that I was some young little chick who wasn't technical, whatever it is, right? And so they used to talk down to me, and that never felt good. And my goal when I created the program was really to create something from beginning to end that would give them the entire thing, to uncover that black box and make them realize that it's actually not that difficult to do if you know all of the steps.
Right. And so, we talked a little bit before, and, I think that I don't care what type of business you open now or what type of side gig you're running or anything that you're trying to do in today's environment, you have to have technology. Technology is going to have to play a part in. There's not one company that I know of that does not have technology in a certain way. You don't have to be a software company. You don't have to be, a tech company, but you're going to have tech in whatever company you do, whether it be from, applications on your phone, on your computer we all have to get technology, whether we like it or not. Technology is going to be in everything we do.
And believe it or not, actually, COVID accelerated the adoption
Absolutely.
of technology by at least, in my mind, 5 years.
At least minimum.
There's so much opportunity now. And I always actually advise entrepreneurs to consider how they can use their existing knowledge or existing expertise, domain expertise, and actually figure out how to solve some of those problems and create more efficiency using software, and actually consider software to scale their business and scale themselves.
Yes.
Because it's so much more powerful to be the creator. There's, from a business perspective, if you create technology and sell it to other people, because software as a business is a very, very efficient and profitable if you set it up correctly. If you find that super critical problem that I call a painkiller, and you're able to solve it directly, there's a lot of opportunity in that. And so I always think, don't just be the user of technology, be the creator.
Yeah, and if I look at people that I know, every one of them has something that they know how to fix for somebody, but they don't know how to go about creating the solution to fix that problem. And some of them have tried. So I've got friends that have tried to go out and actually tried to get with people to develop software for them, an application for them. Some absolute genius ideas that they've had, and they've fallen and they've wasted so much money because they didn't know what they don't know. And they didn't know the questions to ask. They didn't know what to do, and they ended up wasting a lot of money and not being able to do what they do. And I know that's part of what your company does is you guide people into making the correct decisions, doing the right things with the technology.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is really super critical to understand is that there's modern ways of building software that are very different than the traditional way of building software. And the lean startup, I don't know if your audience is familiar with the lean startup philosophies, is all about, so the traditional way, most people build the solution first, and then they go find the audience and the market for it. And in the new way, the lean startup way, is you actually find the market first. You identify the problem that people are going to be willing to pay you money for. You find the business model, and you don't do anything until you actually are sure that there are people who are willing to pay you money for. And so before you spend thousands of dollars on development, you can actually be 100% sure that, hey, if I take this risk and if I do this, I already have customers lined up. And some of my students actually pre-sold their solution. We're able to get paid ahead of actually building anything. And Absolutely. So there's that whole mindset of, why don't we try? Why don't we test in the cheapest way possible? And the whole philosophy behind my training is learn early, learn often, learn cheap. And because there's so much technology that has already been developed, it's actually so much cheaper now to get started. And if you know all of these options, you are so way ahead of the game because you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to build apps like we did before in the early 90s.
Yeah. And I think if people have the mindset that if you find the problem, and this is what you were talking about, if you find the problem, there's going to be a technology solution. There's going to be a solution for it. So if you come with the mindset of, let me find the problem, let me find the audience, let me find the people first, because where there's a will, there's a way, and there are efficient and cheaper ways to do it. But I think that's a great way to do it, is to find the problem before the solution, and get the solution made that fits that problem. And going back to the COVID stuff, I think that I've seen so many amazing tech stuff come out of COVID, and then things that are happening are just genius. For instance, I do a lot of cycling, and one of the applications I use is called Zwift, and it's basically a computer that's hooked up to your bike. You're actually on your real bike, and it's a game. I'm riding with people from all over the world. I think that probably saved my life during COVID because you couldn't go out and do anything.
Part of the community, yeah.
So it's technology that we're able to adapt to and now ride, any time of the day that I want with people from around the world. And I think those are the things that are going to, again, that was someone's idea. That was someone's, passion that they did, and they started this. And I'm seeing a lot of that with COVID, and I'm seeing a lot of, even for companies that are normally brick and mortar, a lot of them are moving to a virtual, or moving to where people work from home. And again, that goes back to the need for the technology, no matter what you're doing. I mean, it's everywhere.
I'll give you an example of actually a brick and mortar business that actually used software to scale themselves, that I think will open up kind of the mindset of what's possible. So it's a flower shop owner, and she used to do wedding flowers, and all of her customers used to complain that they couldn't figure out how to work efficiently with vendors. And she was one of the vendors. She was the flower shop vendor, and she heard this problem over and over and over and over again. And so she decided to build a marketplace where she connected vendors and people who were planning weddings together, and also created a way for them to actually plan their weddings and keep track of all of the communications using software. She was able to raise money for it, and it used to be like a big thing.
Yeah.
And simply, I mean, she already used the knowledge that she had. She already knew the connection of all the vendors because she was doing that manually anyway. And so taking your existing knowledge, taking your existing business and trying to figure out how can you solve those problems that you're probably hearing every single day, but you're ignoring them instead of saying, well, how could I solve this? And can technology help me do that?
Right. And I think one of the biggest hurdles that I find, at least talking with people, is they don't see far enough ahead. So in other words, they're basing what they think is options or what they think is a possible solution based on what they already know, not where things will be in 5 years, not where things will. They're not thinking outside of their current reality to see some of these solutions where technology can come in and help. And what are some of the, like, if you working with clients, what are some of the biggest like problems that your clients have that you see kind of over and over again? Going back to what you were saying, what are your clients' biggest hurdles?
I think the biggest mistakes that people make going into software is that if they have an idea, the first thing they think about is, I need a developer to help me build it. And in the 10-step process that I teach, writing code is actually step number 8. That means that there are 7 steps that you can do, that you should do, before you write a line of code. And a lot of the stuff that we talked about, validation, building a prototype, those 2 things you can do completely without writing any code and allow you to test your idea and refine the solution. And then steps 3 to 7 is all about preparing for building your minimal viable product, so the small version of what you want to build, and iterating to success slowly and strategically. And most people rush that process. And a lot of your developers will say, well, of course, I'll build this for you, right? But then they focus on the product versus on the customer. And that's the biggest mistake that I think a lot of non-technical people make, because they think that the solution is the most important thing. And in the early days, finding the business model that works, solving a problem that actually people are interested in, that's the number one thing you need to think about. And so using this lean and agile way of iterating and figuring out what's going to work and what's not going to work and moving faster is going to enable you to really find what is the thing that people want and are willing to pay for. And that's de-risks this opportunity and the investment that you have to make. And I think that if you look at it that way, it's actually not that risky.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And it's really just important for you to get this process, understand it, and then set the expectations of, this is how I'm going to be working with, versus the developer is going to say, well, let's custom code everything and let's just focus on code. And I think that's why it's so important for non-technical entrepreneurs to know all of this stuff and not just rely on tech people to advise them.
Right. And what's funny is you see the same sort of agile type model of developing stuff in big companies like Google's and all these big tech companies, and even non-tech companies. You see them going to that model. And I want so I want the listeners to kind of look at this a little bit different, because I don't want people to listen to this show and say, "Oh, that's for someone that's just building a tech company or someone." What are some of the different types of customers you've had that you've helped get through? Because I would bet that a majority of your customers are not tech companies. They're absolutely. So this isn't a tech thing. This is how to utilize tech to get your solution to market.
Yeah. So I already shared a flower example with you. Another one is a yoga instructor. She had a yoga studio in New York City, and she was tired of trading hours for money. And, with the studio, you can't scale, even if you have employees, beyond the total number of hours that you guys can work. And this was way pre-COVID, before everybody was doing classes online. She decided to build an app to teach parents how to do yoga with their kids. And it was an instant hit. And she launched the app. I mean, she was obviously non-technical. She had no idea what she was doing, but she extended the revenue source of her business, instantly became a global business, because now anyone from anywhere in the world could buy the app. And she set it up as a subscription service, right? I always say, build an app business, not an app, because people are unwilling to pay 99 cents in the app store. But if you shift that as this is a service I'm providing, then people are willing to pay you for it, and be happy to do that. And so she was able to create new revenue sources, again, using her existing skills. Another really great example is a real estate guy. Again, no tech experience. He was just in real estate for like 20 years, heard the same problem over and over and over again. He was an agent and saw a lot of inefficiencies that he then could solve for. He was like, what would I do? Like, what would I need if I had to solve this problem? And so using prototyping, he was able to visualize his solution. He took this prototype, which was just a clickable prototype, and took it to an agency and showed it to them and said, this is my idea. This is the product I'm building. And just on the prototype, on the clickable prototype, without writing any line of code, he was able to pre-sell his solution and got paid to build it. This was one of the examples that I told you that, he got prepaid to actually build the solution. And then he came to my program to actually learn how to bring that idea to life. So there's lots and lots of these types of examples. And I think the most powerful examples, I mean, we have doctors, we have dentists. I have a dentist in the program right now who has such unique lens on the problem. I couldn't solve any of the problems that she's seeing because I have no idea what those problems are. But she, again, was in the industry for 27 years, and she just saw the same thing over and over again. And she has a very unique problem and a unique lens onto that problem that gives her an advantage because no one else can copy that problem. And so there's a lot of people who have domain expertise who can share and scale their expertise through technology by solving inefficiencies. I mean, that's all you have to do.
Right. Yeah. Now, I've seen you on Clubhouse as well. And by the way, you're crushing it on Clubhouse. You're doing great. So, we're talking about proof of concepts and we're talking about, doing this stuff. To me, I see Clubhouse as one of those venues to be able to do a proof of concept of an idea, because you can have immediate feedback from people. And you can get pretty quick on Clubhouse. Where do you see Clubhouse? I know I'm going all over the place. I've got so many questions. I'm going all over the place, but where do you see?
It's awesome. Yes, so we just got off a coaching call. So every Friday we do a coaching call, and today we talked about how to do customer development and validation on Clubhouse. Because it is the most perfect venue to be the fly on the wall and listen to the problems that people are expressing. So you can go to any room has a topic. You can start a room on whatever topic you're interested in, and you can strategically use this venue to be able to spot the problems that people have, to see how they talk about them, how they express them. Some people are so emotional about how they communicate, like all of these things that you want in an interview, doing customer development in one-on-one setting. You're basically a spy on a wall and listening to all of that. And so much learning can happen from that.
Yeah. So, and I think from a marketing standpoint and from finding, so again, we talked, early on in the podcast, find your problem that you're going to solve first, then go and look at a technology or a solution to fix that problem. And to me, Clubhouse, like you said, it's the perfect way to, go identify problems, but I also go on there and I'll start talking about things and see how people react to solutions. So you can so before you'd have to kind of build a prototype, then you'd go take it to a few customers and you would say, how does it work? How do you think? On Clubhouse, you can take a lot of that, the philosophy of what you're doing, out there and get immediate feedback from people who are currently having those problems, and how does that resonate with them, and how does it work? So yeah, I think Clubhouse is going to be one of the, if they do it right. But again, that's one of those technologies. And what gets me is, I was doing that back in the 80s. It was called 1-800-Conference. And it's like, come on.
That was called the radio, the call-in show.
I'm like, I guess what's old is new again. But they put a spin on it.
Well, what I think they did really, really well is they capitalized on two trends, which is podcasting and social networking. So social networking hasn't been disrupted since really Facebook and Twitter. Like nothing else really took off, and Instagram.
Right.
Those are the big three players, and nothing else has really took off since then. And so that industry was ripe for disruption. And voice was, like with podcasting, has been on the rise for the last few years. It's still on the rise, right? And they married those two together, and it was like, I think the pandemic was their perfect catalyst for it, because people were craving for communication and connection. And once you experience talking to people while being a part of the conversation rather than typing like on Twitter or Instagram, it's a whole different way of communication. And I think that's the innovation that they were able to capitalize on, which is awesome.
Yeah. And how happy do you think Apple is right now that it's an Apple only? Because I know I actually know a lot of people that have jumped ship from other platforms to get on Apple so they could get on Clubhouse. And it's like,
oh, I know,
Apple's in the background going, just keep it on Apple, keep it on Apple, don't move it, because it is. I mean, they've grown a market share since Clubhouse has been out. Since it's those listening, it's a Apple only. For now, I know they're going to come out with some other ones, but for now it's Apple only. So how are you going to use Clubhouse in kind of what you do? Are you going to use it as a platform to kind of get a prototype out there of getting the feedback? Or are you going to actually use it for? See, and I think it's also a perfect application for actually going out and connecting, getting people into your tribe. Not only going out to see a solution and see these things out there and see what the problems people are having, but also it's a fantastic way to actually, and it's not like the other social media where you'll go like someone and on Instagram or Facebook and you might never talk to them. It's like you're talking with these people, so it's actually connecting. Yeah. It's
so amazing for connecting and showcasing your expertise. It's like, for me, it has changed my business during the pandemic. So I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer, and part of the way that I promote my program is actually doing trainings for other organizations. And when events got canceled, I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? It's not like people are advertising anywhere that they have an idea or they need to be in the space. So it was going to be very hard for me to actually realize, find my tribe or find the people that needed my help. And through Clubhouse, I just start a room on the topic, and everyone who is interested in that topic flocks to me. I host rooms a few times a week, and I'm able to fill up my webinars, and people who want to learn more, and even people who upgrade to take the trainings. And I feel so amazing because my webinars and everything that I do is all focused on action. And I get so much feedback from people, even who don't take my courses and just take my free webinars, that they say, well, you completely transformed at how I look at this. And now I'm able to take action. And that's like, when I'm hearing that I'm fulfilling my mission, because it's all about taking action every day. And if you are really passionate about taking your idea to life, and the only thing that's stopping you is the fact that you are not technical, that's a huge shame.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so much you can do as a non-technical person that does not require developers' help. And if I can show you how to do that, how to take that first step and give you the confidence to know that you're on equal footing with these people, right? Yeah. You don't need to have the developer God complex, which is what most non-technical people have. And once you realize that, hey, I bring something to the table, it changes the game for them. And that's what I'm here to do, really, is just shift their mindset that they can do this.
And it's, you go back to, some of the technology. You don't need to be a technology. There was a story I read last week where a guy, he hired, I think on Fiverr. So he went and he hired a music person that, you can get anything done on Fiverr, had a music person create some music for him. And then he went and he paid a TikTok star, I think $500 to do the song. And all of a sudden, so literally with $600-700, he's like a TikTok sensation because he didn't know any of the stuff himself. He didn't know how to do music. He wasn't a TikTok, but he was able to align things to get where he wants to go. And I think that's where your webinars, people don't know what they don't know. We talked about that, and going to like your webinars and going to those things, you're going to learn at least a piece of knowledge on how to make that next step. And I think that's one of the biggest problems is people don't even know that there is a next step. They can't see that next step because they don't know. So going to like your webinars and stuff, that's a great place. And let's talk about your company a little bit, Techspeak. How long have you been doing that?
Well, I first launched it in 2012. So it's been around for a long time. I actually thought it was going to take me 2 weeks to create because I do this stuff every day. And my goal was to teach everything that I do every day with my developers. And it actually took me about 3.5 months of full-time work nonstop to create, simply because I had to take these big, hairy subjects and then try to distill them into small, compact, these are the essentials that you need to know. So that was a challenge, but a very interesting one. And so I launched it in 2012, and I've been doing them live over the weekend, pre-COVID. And that has been working. And then when COVID happened, I was like, well, this is the prime time to actually launch it online. I've always had feedback, like people would say, oh, I love the process, and they would learn it over 2 days. But I wish I had something to come back and refer to. And that's what really now is the program. They have something, they learn it. I give them support, but they have something for a lifetime to come back to and re-listen and learn more, etc. So it's now allowing me to kind of like a blessing in disguise, right? To affect and reach so many more people because I have people from Australia taking my program and India and like all these countries who I wouldn't be able to reach before because it was an event people had to travel to. And that was a big barrier for a lot of people. Yeah.
And we are in such a great time in history for me. I think we're in such a great time because if we look back even 20 years ago, having access to you or having access to your resources was very hard for people to do in general. We have resources that we have access to literally for a couple $100, couple $1,000, whatever it is, that we have access to anytime on the computer. We didn't have those things, 15, 20 years ago. They were much harder. They were much more expensive. You might have charged, $5,000 an hour for your time for consulting. And now because of technology, we can now reduce that cost, and we can, if there's anything that you can't do, shame on you, because there's
all answers. The information is out there.
It's all there, and their answers are all there. There's people, so taking, your stuff, it's like it's all there. It's there. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing those things.
Absolutely. And I think if you take programs and let's talk about learning in general, there is so much out there, so much free content that's available, and that's so incredible and so powerful. But that's also a problem I think it presents a problem of too much choice. And you have no idea where to focus and what opinion to trust. And so when you're picking people that you want to work with or learn from, get to know them as people and what they teach, how they teach, the approach of their teaching, and spend the money to cut your learning curve to be able to just get what knowledge they want to share with you, because they've already done all the work. They've done the more expensive work to be able to get to where they are. And to be able to learn from them and cut your learning time, like I said, is incredibly rewarding, because you now know that the information you're getting is legitimate and is actionable and is actually worth whatever you paid for.
And that's the thing. You can literally cut years to weeks on getting something done because of going through people who have already been there. They've already done that. And we have to, it always cracks me up when someone comes to me and they're like, well, I'm not going to pay $1,000 for that. I mean, that's a waste of, I'm not going to go spend $1,000 just to learn. I'm like, you're going to spend $20,000 if you try doing it on your own.
Yeah.
And it's going to take you a hell of a lot longer. Spend $1,000, learn what you need to know, and move on. Because if I can spend $1,000 and make $100,000, it's like, duh. But people, it's boy, that's a big hurdle sometimes to do that.
Well, it's funny we're talking about money, because I actually created a quiz. And if you guys are interested in the link, it's techspeak.co/quiz. And if you take the quiz, it'll actually calculate, based on the mistakes that you make, how much money you're leaving on the table. And if you make every single mistake in the 10-step process that I teach, that number, very conservatively, comes out to be $156,000.
Now, what if I failed 12 of the 10?
Because sometimes you do multiple failures in each of the steps.
Sometimes I do the same. Sometimes I fail on the exact same step.
That's not good, though.
No, that's not good.
So I mean, if you don't know what you don't know, you're always going to make mistakes, and some of those mistakes are really expensive. And I think what's in business, the biggest asset you have is time.
Yeah.
And sometimes not missing the market opportunity is what's really, really essential. Because if you're taking too long to launch, if you're taking too long to learn, you literally could miss that window of opportunity that you can totally capitalize on, simply because you don't know the information.
Yeah. So if I had a friend, which I do, believe it or not, I'm an IT guy, but I still have friends, that is looking to create a business from, again, they see a problem, and this is real. I mean, they see a problem in the industry that they're in, and they know that there's a solution to help a lot of people out. What are the steps that she should take? What's the first thing, like if you had a client, what's the first thing you would say, here's your first thing to do?
So the first thing to do is to go through a formal customer validation process. And this process is all based on the lean startup methodology. And it's very not scalable, but the goal of it is to have one-on-one conversations with your potential customers. And you actually identifying your potential customer is actually one of the things you're testing, because you could be talking to different groups of types of people that could be the perfect audience for you. So we talked about looking for the market, looking for the business model, and actually finding the most lucrative opportunity through this step, and really defining the problem. I love this example. This woman came into my program. She already had her solution figured out, and I pushed her to do this validation step. And I said, you really need to do this first. I know that you are an expert in your field. I know this is the way you think the solution should happen, but just humor me. Go through this first step first. And there was only one insight that she got from one of maybe the 10th conversation that she had. She had that insight, and she followed up on it. And all of her next interviews, she figured out and built on top of that insight. And the definition of the problem that was directly related to that insight. And so once she realized what that problem was, the solution of how she needed to solve that problem was completely different than what solution she thought she needed to build. That's how important this step is, right? It was completely, same industry, right? Same types of people. Yeah. But the way she needed to solve that problem was completely different.
See, I am so her. I've done that. I came from the philosophy of build it and then they will come. And that's That's not
That
how
only
it
works in that movie.
Because let me tell you, I built a whole bunch of really killer stuff and nobody came. Nobody. Had I done what you say and actually gone out and see what the people really need, then I might have been successful at those. But no, I've been there, and that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Well, I want to. What is the best way for people to get again? And for all the people listening, it's going to be in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so the best place to find me is techspeakforentrepreneurs.com. If you are interested in any of the free webinars that we mentioned, there's a link right in the navigation that says free classes. You can't miss it. Just click on it and you'll see the free classes that I offer every week. Just sign up for a webinar and you'll learn a lot from that process, even if you don't purchase the course. Of course, if you actually want to get the step-by-step, feel free to check that out. But you will learn the first step you need to take, the second step you need to take, the third step you need to take, the whole philosophy for how you should be approaching and thinking about it. So that'll be very helpful for you to just have as a framework for how you need to think about starting a tech startup as a non-tech person.
And what's the best way for them to get with you on Clubhouse? See, I think that's a great thing to do as well. As
Yeah,
Clubhouse.
absolutely.
What's your handle?
I'm Digital Woman everywhere on social. I have digitalwoman.com. That's my persona on the web. So you can find me anywhere.
Oh, fantastic! I can't wait to get into some more of your rooms up there. I'm very interested in, and there's some great stuff up there. So thank you, and I really want to thank you for being on the podcast, and everyone listening. Do go and check Nelly out. She's got some great stuff up on her website with her webinars, and spend 20, 30 minutes because again, you don't know what you don't know. And to me, that's one of the biggest problems that I see with people is they don't move forward because they don't even know that there is a forward. So it's not like they even give up. They think it's too hard. I'm going to give up. They give up because they don't think it's even possible. So I think that's one of the biggest problems that I see, and you definitely help solve that problem for people. So great job on that, and again, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Pleasure. Yeah,
thank you so much.